أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا ليعذب الله المنافقين والمنافقات والمشركين والمشركات ويتوب الله على المؤمنين والمؤمنات وكان الله غفورا رحيما.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله الحمد لله رب العالمين. We give praise and adoration to Almighty Allah for sparing our lives and giving us another opportunity to witness another exciting episode of My UK OU Who Believe Today, the online program of Old Kent Road Mosque. My name is Falila Talabi, and I greet you in the best of greeting and say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. So tonight is a very special episode on health. So we brought a panel of health professionals together. They have so kindly accepted, agreed, to share their experience with us on our platform. And this is coming to you with the support of the Global Majority Funds in collaboration with My UK Wellbeing Team. So today, please take your seat, invite others to enjoy and to share in this very important topic. It's a health talk, on the measures and issues, to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19 on the community. So I have a few assignments before, announcements before I call on the Quran reciter. First, I'd like to thank everyone for the support, the donation, both in kind and in cash during the last fundraising that Man UK, Man Sisters, and the Youth Wing that we did last week, Saturday. I want to say a very big thank you and Jazakumullah khairan. I pray that Allah accepts his acts of ibadah from every one of us. Also, the £100 appeal is still ongoing. We are still asking for funds. Please help build our mosque, as we always say. Also, I want to, on behalf of Man UK management, congratulate Ar-Rahman Mosque on the installation of the new Imam, Sheikh Nasiruddin Olariwaju Imam. So I'll hold on for now and call on the Quran reciter to give us a short recitation from the Holy Quran, then I'll continue. I'd like to call on Ramatullah Diakite to please give us the recitation from the Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في الخلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا له عذاب السعير صدق الله العظيم.
Allahu Akbar. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much for the beautiful recitation. May Allah bless you and bless your parents. Now, I don't want to waste too much of our time because I know people are eager to, listen to the health professionals. I am not a health professional. And who else to moderate this panel of discussants other than our father, our teacher, Professor Moshood Adebayo Badiri. Bismillah, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you so much, Alaja Fadila, for anchoring us. And I also welcome every one of us, our panelists and all our viewers and listeners, both in-house and across the world over the internet. As Alaja Fadila mentioned, today is a very special program. It's a health talk. Which is, an intervention of the Global Majority Funds, as was mentioned, which Man UK is benefiting from through the auspices of Muslim charity. Now, we know COVID is still on. And it has had some very serious impacts across the different communities, even including our own community. So this intervention is very welcome. And there are a whole lot of projects, within the intervention. This is just one of it in relation to looking after ourselves, our health. Other projects under it will be coming, and people will be informed as and when due. Now, from an Islamic perspective, health is everything. The Englishman will tell you that health is wealth. And in Islam, health is everything. There's an hadith in which somebody came to ask the Holy Prophet ﷺ about, what they can ask Allah. And the Prophet said, Sallallahu al-afwa wal-afiyah. Ask from Allah forgiveness and good health. He say, ask from Allah forgiveness and good health. So that goes to show the importance of good health in that perspective. So, we really appreciate our panel of speakers today. We have four main people, speakers, professionals on the panel, whom I am really privileged to be introducing. And we have a few people also, a couple of people in-house who might be supporting them, particularly when we reach the question and answers stage. The first speaker I'll be introducing is, Ross Lamb. Ross is the Senior Service Officer at Bowel Cancer UK. He manages a UK-wide program of bowel cancer awareness and is supported by a team of volunteers, many of whom had personal experience of bowel cancer. Bowel cancer is a very big issue. Especially within our community, we need to know about it. And it's important that, we learn how to, look after ourselves in that regard. Ross will be speaking to us on bowel cancer public awareness. So, Ross Lamb, you are most welcome. Thank you for your time. We really, really appreciate, you're giving up your time for this. The second person on the panel is one of our sisters, Sister Mistura Yusuf. Sister Mistura works in Brent as a health educator, healthy work leader, and community diabetes champion. She is a nutritionist with postgraduate certificate from Leeds Metropolitan University. She also has an MSc in human nutrition from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria, and a certificate in dietetics from Lagos University Teaching Hospital in Nigeria. She believes in healthy lifestyle as a part of the bigger picture of achieving holistic health and well-being. A healthy lifestyle, can actually eliminate a whole lot of things. when we lead a healthy lifestyle, including what we eat and exercising and things like that. Diabetes is a very silent ailment, a silent killer. A lot of people are not very much aware. So Sister Mistura will be talking about diabetes awareness, prevention, and also management. Mistura, we really welcome you and we thank you for your time. You've been doing this in the community. May Allah continue to assist and reward you accordingly abundantly. Our third speaker is Dr. Hamed Balogun. He's a medical doctor. He practiced as an NHS medical doctor before he ventured into medicine development and safety. Currently, he's a director in a biotech company. Dr. Balogun graduated with a bachelor's in medicine and surgery from the College of Medicine, University of Ilorin. He then acquired a master's in pharmacovigilance and pharmacoepidemiology from the University of Bordeaux. So he will also be speaking to us today on social exclusion and health inequalities in the ethnic minority groups. Inequalities exist everywhere, and also in relation to, health. During the COVID pandemic, we had a whole lot of different stories in relation to inequalities and how people are excluded, from, benefiting from interventions for that. So we really thank Dr. Hamed Balogun for his time as well, and for sharing his knowledge on this platform with us. The fourth and final speaker, but not the least, is Mr. Lawal Uriola. Mr. Lawal Uriola is a social worker in an adult integrated community team. He'll be speaking to us about the Mental Capacity Act and lasting power of attorney. This is also very, very important. Even people who have, mental, issues, you find out that mental health issues, you find out that, they have rights under the Mental Capacity Act. And people should know. A lot of the time, people don't know these things. So all the four topics are really, really very important. And I believe I'm really anxious to learn, because this is not my field, but health is very important to every one of us, as I said. Now we have 40 minutes, normally as we do, 40 pure minutes for speaking, and then plenty of time for questions. A lot of the time, these type of issues, question and answering brings out, things that perhaps maybe the speakers might not themselves have spoken of. So what we will do is that each speaker will have 10 minutes, let's keep to time, 10 minutes to, do a general presentation of the topic. And then after the four speakers have spoken, we'll be able to take questions, from the floor and from other experts who are in-house on this subject matter. So once again, we thank every one of our speakers who is here. And after saying that, let me hand over to Mr. Ross Lamb to speak to us about bowel cancer and the public awareness on that. Ross, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. It's my pleasure to be here this evening. I have some slides that I can share. Hopefully I'll be able to get these up on screen for everyone. The presentations that we give usually last around half an hour, but I realize it's just a 10-minute slot tonight. So if you see me flicking through some of the slides pretty quickly, that's a reason why, but I'll try to concentrate on the most important topics and the things that I think people will get the most amount of value for this evening. So if you bear with me just a second, I'll pull the slides up onto the screen now. And hopefully everybody can see that and the clock has started ticking. So thank you for that.
Yes, we can see it now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So the facts about bowel cancer, this is what we'll be looking at this evening. So the talk won't cover all of these things. I'll quickly run through, as I mentioned, the most important things. But really, we'll find out what bowel cancer is, the importance of bowel cancer screening, and I'll tell you a little bit about Bowel Cancer UK, but we won't go into it in huge amount of detail. It's far better to find out about the symptoms, risk factors, and the screening program. So firstly, what actually is bowel cancer? So if you look at the graphic on screen right here, the organ that kind of looks like a question mark, that is your large bowel, which is made up of the colon and the rectum. So when we talk about bowel cancer, we're talking about the large bowel. In a hospital scenario, it would be called colorectal cancer. That's just more the medical name for it. So most bowel cancers develop from things that are called polyps. So the pictures that you are seeing on screen right here are pictures taken from inside the large bowel. And these are polyps that have been growing on the wall of the large bowel. I can't tell you from looking at these whether they're cancerous or not, but when somebody goes under a procedure called a colonoscopy, these polyps can actually be removed. They then go to a department called histology where they can be tested to find out whether they are cancerous or not. So that's just to give you an indication of how bowel cancers can kind of start. So you may be surprised to hear that bowel cancer is actually very common. I heard the professor there say that it's quite common in your community. Throughout all communities of the UK, and in this case, England, you can see the actual numbers are it's actually over 34,000 people who are diagnosed. So unfortunately, it's not something that's super rare. It's something that's actually very common. And you can see that tens of thousands of people, unfortunately, are diagnosed with bowel cancer each year. It's more common in people who are over 50, but it's very important for me to make it known to people that bowel cancer can affect people of all ages. You don't have to be an older person to get bowel cancer. You can be a young person and still develop bowel cancer. And just to really emphasize that point, you can see that every year around 2,500 people under 50 are diagnosed with bowel cancer in the UK. So again, that's just to give you that awareness. These figures on screen right now just shows where bowel cancer sits in relation to other cancers. So in terms of cancer deaths, you can see that bowel cancer is there at number 2. Nearly 14,000 people lose their life to bowel cancer each year. So this is a really sad figure, and it shouldn't be this high. And it shouldn't be this high because bowel cancer is actually very treatable and curable if it's picked up early. And if it's picked up early, nearly everyone will survive. So this stat or bar charts on screen right now are the 5-year survival. You can see stage 1, which is the earliest stage of bowel cancer. If it's picked up at that stage, 92% of people will survive. However, if you then run along to stage 4, you can see that that figure drops to only 10%. So at stage 4 bowel cancer, which is the most advanced stage, only 10% of people will survive. That's why it's so important to have bowel cancer diagnosed early. So we'll go on to speak about the symptoms now, because knowing them are very important and could actually save your life. So there's 5 main symptoms of bowel cancer. The first one is bleeding. So any bleeding that comes from your bottom, or any blood that's turning up in your poo, or any blood that you notice on the toilet roll when you go to the bathroom, that is something that you definitely go to your GP to find out. In the vast majority of cases where blood is found, it's not bowel cancer. It could be something fairly benign like hemorrhoids. But again, please, if anything like that is going on for you, get yourself along to your doctor and get checked out. The second one is a persistent and unexplained change in bowel habit. So if you're somebody that's used to going to the bathroom a couple of times a day and all of a sudden you find you can't go at all, or you're finding that you're going 7, 8, 9 times a day, again, if that persists for any period of time, please go to see your doctor. Unexplained weight loss. So you're not on a crazy exercise regime, you're not on a diet of any kind, but you're finding that the weight is falling off your body. You need to go get that checked out. Again, that's abnormal. Extreme tiredness for no obvious reason. This kind of loops back to the first symptom, which is bleeding. So if you do have a cancerous tumor, which is bleeding, that in turn can lead to you becoming anemic. And we know that when people are anemic, they can feel very tired and just washed out for no obvious reason. And again, your doctor could give you a very simple blood test to find out whether you are anemic or not. And then the final one is a pain or a lump in your tummy. So anything really in your tummy region that doesn't feel quite right, an ache, a pain, something that you know is new that wasn't there before, please go to your doctor and get that checked out just to find out what the cause of that is. I'll skip by this one and go straight onto the risk factors. So we don't actually know what causes most bowel cancers, but we do know that there's risk factors associated with developing the disease. So we know that things like not eating enough fiber, not having enough fiber in your diet is a risk factor for bowel cancer. If you eat too much processed meat or too much red meat, again, that's a risk factor. Also being overweight. Smoking, not just for bowel cancer, but for a whole variety of cancers, is bad news. So if you do smoke, I would, take steps to try and stop smoking. I know that it's not always easy. Same with losing weight, really. I completely understand that it's not always easy, but try to get support for those things. And then this obviously doesn't apply to you guys, but drinking alcohol is a risk factor for bowel cancer. And then just finally, not getting enough physical activity. So again, it doesn't mean that you have to start running marathons, all that type of thing, but even just going for a walk around the block, walking your dog, doing the housework, anything like that, anything that basically gets your heart rate going and pumping the blood around your body, that counts as physical activity and is very good for you. There's other risk factors. Unfortunately, we're all going to get older. We all age. And as we do age, things can start to go awry in the body. Our hearing might get a little bit worse. Our vision might get a little bit worse. And also inside, our cells are starting to age and cancers can develop. The other things are things like strong family history, inflammatory bowel disease. And if you have type 2 diabetes, we also know that that's a risk factor for bowel cancer. However, having gone over all these risk factors, it doesn't mean if you have any of these things, it doesn't mean that you'll definitely get bowel cancer. What it means is you just need to be aware of these things. I certainly don't want to frighten anybody here tonight to think, if they're not doing all these things perfectly, they're going to end up with bowel cancer. That's not the case. Just try your best to lower your risk. And that's a really good step to take. So bowel cancer screening, in the last 2.5 minutes, I'll rush through this and try and get you as much information as possible. So we know that bowel screening is very important because early detection, as I've already mentioned, is so important because if this cancer is picked up early, we know that it's very curable. And then also prevention, we know that bowel cancer screening can actually prevent some bowel cancers even developing in the first place, which is actually better than even getting to stage 1. If you can pick it up before it even becomes a cancer, that is a really fortunate position to be in. So who's included in bowel cancer screening? It's everyone aged between 60 to 74. So if you're registered with a GP, you'll be included in the screening program. And basically that means that you'll be sent a kit in the post automatically every 2 years. This is a picture of the kit on screen right now. It's really quick and easy to do. You only need to take 1 sample of poo and then you just basically send it away in the post. That gets checked and it tells you whether any blood has been found. So as you can see from these pictures here, you basically come up with a way to catch your poo. Then you take the stick out the little tube, you collect a little sample, you send it away in the post, and then you will get the results back generally within 2 weeks. So the bowel screening centre receives the kit that you send off and the samples are tested for blood. So the test is not actually looking for bowel cancer, it's actually looking for blood because blood can be an indication of bowel cancer. As you heard me mention earlier, in the vast majority of cases where blood is found, it's not bowel cancer. It's, it could be something else fairly benign like hemorrhoids. But again, if blood has been found, that needs to be checked out and it needs to be investigated further. So the 2 test results you can receive are no further tests are needed at this period in time and you'll be tested again in 2 years, or further tests are needed, i.e. blood has been found and you'll be invited to hospital for some screening. And just in the last 30 seconds, I'll explain what the screening is. So you'll be offered a colonoscopy, which is basically a tube with a camera, a long tube with a camera on the end of it. That is inserted into the large bowel. It goes all the way around and it's really the gold standard for finding out what is going on inside the bowel. And if something is found, you can obviously be treated. And that is basically wrapping up what a colonoscopy and the screening program is. Currently, only 6 out of 10 people take the screening test. So if this does come through the post, I encourage you to take it. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. Ross, for really compacting that into, 10 minutes. Very informative. Thank you. I know there will be a lot of questions. Incidentally, I have taken that test. I mentioned it on this program some time ago, colonoscopy, and it was really very beneficial. And one of our colleagues, who is a gastroenterologist, he anytime, it's his profession, but anytime there's an incident, he always says, he has a responsibility to tell all, people that when you are above 50 years, you need to do a colonoscopy. He always says it all the time. It has really become like a jest now, but I think it's a serious thing which I mean, particularly people in our community should, should try and be aware of. Thank you so much, Ross.
You're
Please
welcome.
stay around, and I know there will be a lot of questions for you. Thank you very, very much. Yeah. Okay. Our second speaker is Sister Mistura, who will be speaking to us on diabetes awareness. So, Sister Mistura, please, 10 minutes.
Looking for my slides.
Okay.
Pulling my slides.
We can't hear you, Sister Mistura.
Okay, I think that's maybe Sister Mistura is having technical issues with the slides. What we will do is, maybe while you sort out your slides, let's go on to the third speaker because of time. I don't know whether Dr. Hamid Balogun is, okay, Sister Mistura started now.
You need to
Okay.
mute yourself.
Oh, but what is it? What? Can you hear me? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We can hear you clear.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to be talking on diabetes awareness, causes and treatment. I'll go for the facts first. Every 2 minutes in England, somebody is diagnosed with diabetes. At the moment, we have about almost 5 million people with diabetes. And I'll go to the end that we almost 1 million people already have diabetes and they are not diagnosed. And that's a big warning sign. I'll be talking about what it is, types, the main symptoms, risks, and why awareness is important, and I'll briefly talk about the treatment as well. So what is diabetes? It's a condition where the amount of sugar in the blood is too high, and this is because the body cannot use it properly. So with people that have diabetes, their pancreas does not work and does not produce enough insulin. So the insulin that produces does not really work. And here you have this pancreas right there under the liver. So when we eat food, the carbohydrate part of our food is digested and turned into sugar. And the insulin is produced by the pancreas to help us use the energy from a carbohydrate part of the school very well for activities that we do. So there are 2 main types of diabetes. We have diabetes type 1 and type 2. In type 1, the insulin, which mops up the sugar so that it can be used by the body, is not produced at all. So you have the key, the insulin, which opens the door for the sugar to be used by the body, is not there. So insulin is not produced at all. So the blood sugar sits in the body. And then you have the type 2, in which the key is there. There is some insulin, but it's either is not enough or what is produced is not effective. So in both cases, with type 1, the only treatment for type 1 is to use insulin. Without insulin, in the past, people used to die of type 1. It's very easy to die of type 1 diabetes, but for type 2, because some insulin is produced, you can use the tablets or insulin to help the patient for the pancreas to work better and produce insulin, which can be used by the body. So what are the symptoms? The main symptoms, they are silent. They can be silent, and people can be having these symptoms and not know. But when the blood sugar sits in the body wants to get rid of it. So you start going to the toilet, and then you become very thirsty because you are losing a lot of water. You become very tired because the body is not using the insulin for energy, and then it's wasted. And with time, there can be weight loss. And again, it's taking some time to diagnose. There can be damage to the eyes, and then you have kind of blurred vision. Other symptoms include things like genital itching,
And with type 1 symptoms, it's very fast because insulin is not produced and it's necessary. So the person will be very uncomfortable, and diagnosis is kind of very fast. But with type 2 can go on for 5-6 years without people knowing, and that's the danger, because when it goes on for too long, we have damage done to from the head to the legs. So what causes type 1? We don't really know, but we have some viral or other infections involved, and it can be genetic. In type 1, the problem is that pancreas, the cells of the pancreas starts to eat itself, and it's called autoimmune disease. In that, although you have it's supposed to protect us, but it gets eaten up and destroyed. The risk factor of type 2 diabetes, with age, as we grow older, just like any other disease, it can occur around age 40 for the white population, but for the BAME people, it comes on quite early, around age 25. So as you're aging, changes can come. And again, it can be genetic in the family. If your close family have it, you might develop it too. Also, if there is high blood pressure, that's another risk factor. It affects men more than women. And like we said, weight is one factor that really affects people with that predisposes people to type 2 diabetes. What is happening now with COVID? We've now found out that there have been about five in a large study of about 47,000 people. About 5% of them have been found to kind of have diabetes as well. And then also we are having children we are having type 1 diabetes now diagnosed in children higher than before. And we don't really know why this is happening, but COVID has come as kind of come to affect the diagnosis of diabetes. So, and it's like, I think, the way COVID, the virus kind of affected the lungs is the same thing. It goes for the pancreas, damages the pancreas, and then affects the production of insulin in the pancreas. Where I live, we had about a third of people that died of COVID had diabetes. So it's something new that we are seeing. So, like I said, about 1 million people have it and they don't know. And then with COVID has made it a lot more. I want to be fast. So why is the awareness important? It's like, if you're able to control our blood glucose very well, then we'll be able to manage it better, and we can reduce the risk of having complications of it. So what are the treatment options? Usually, everyone is different and treatment varies, is always individualized. So with type 1, they treat them with insulin, like I said. You also have other things like you have the pump, or they could have transplants. For type 2, they go on insulin, but although initially they start with healthy eating and moving more, but with time they can, as they age, they might end up using insulin. And then low calorie diet also has been shown to work in some cases for treatment. People are able to lose weight, and we have something called diabetes remission. But this treatment is used for obese patients. We also have weight loss surgery for some people, and for other types of diabetes, that will be the health professional would kind of talk about that. Can discuss that with the health professional. In addition to the healthy eating and the food management, there is the physical activity. People need to really walk more and exercise more, at least around 150 minutes of moderate intensity. That's about 30 minutes 5 days a week, and that will be combined with about 75 minutes of vigorous activity, which can be taken. You don't have to take it all at once. You can break it down into 10 minutes, just like the first presenter said, physical activities does not mean you have to do everything. There's so many ways. Start slowly, the one that fits you. You can then use the one that fits you. But on Diabetes UK website, you've got loads of advice on what to go. But apart from the physical activities benefits for diabetes, it has other benefits. Like he said, that it can reduce your chances of having cancer, colon cancer, by 20% and other things as well. I don't want to talk to. And then for the food, it's about having healthy food choices and having healthy balanced meals. Like you want to take more of vegetables, reduce your fat. It's actually the same management with what the colon cancer presenter talked about. Making healthier choices, whole meal carbohydrates, eating less salt, reducing your meat, making good choices of healthy fats, cut down on sugar. Take your minerals and food from your food. Eat natural. Try and reduce what we take with the snacks, and reduce things like diabetic food, because they just cost you money. It's better to eat healthily. And I will now go on to this slide, which says if you want to know your own risk of diabetes, if you have your you can take a picture of this slide and go to Diabetes UK risk score. So if you they're required to take your height, weight, and waist circumference, answer some questions, then you get your risk. Then with your risk, you will know that you can be rolled into an NHS program, which would help you to manage your weight, because weight is a risk factor with diabetes. And with COVID, we've all become more sedentary, and we've also become, we also eat out a lot more. A lot of people order food, things have changed, so we should really be mindful. But this is like, if you take this exercise, I think it's something that will really be helpful. So, and I said, thank you for listening to me. If you have any questions, I'll take questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mistura. Another very useful and informative, presentation on diabetes. And I believe, one common factor that has, been reflected is, the need to get much more activity, especially now. Many people are working from home a lot of the time. We sit for a very long time at our laptops. So it's very, very, very important. I know we'll be coming back into that. But Sister Mistura, before the questions, I want you to prepare your mind. On your screen, when you were talking about the causes, there was a picture of a brain, the head with a brain. You didn't speak about that. I was really anxious to know what that meant in relation to causes. Don't answer now, but reflect over it. When we come to questions, you'll be able to take that. Thank you so much for that presentation. Let us go quickly to the third speaker, Dr. Hamid Balogun, who will be talking about, social exclusion and health inequalities within the ethnic minority groups. Dr. Balogun, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope everyone can hear me clearly. I was Astaghfirullah, Innallah Ghafurur Rahim. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. And I think it is, again, for all the wonderful activities that has been undertaken by the OU Believe team. We pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to guide and protect every one of us. Ameen. So very briefly, I think the topic I'm going to be talking about is mainly social exclusion and health inequalities, the ethnic element. Now, with all the things we've been talking about, and of course the choice of this specific topic is actually deliberate, because we could spend a lot of time understanding the pathophysiology, the what, the why, and the how of many commonly occurring medical conditions, which is quite important for us as a community, which of course I'll still come back to later on. But I think at the end of the day, we still need to be able to understand that there are certain factors within our community which consciously or unconsciously actually preventing us from being able to access some of these, some of the services which are available. Now, some of the challenges are individual, some of it are structural, which perhaps we have no control over. But I think more importantly, the factors which I think, which affect us as a community, it is always very important for us to remind ourselves of it and also look for ways to try to see how we can actually tackle some of these challenges. Now, first and foremost, the first concept is the concept around marginalization. Now, why did I choose this very specific term? Now, marginalization in itself described both a process and a condition that prevents individuals or groups from full participation in social, economic, and political life. Now, as a condition, it can prevent individuals from actively participating. So first and foremost, we do recognize that there are services available to us, but to what extent are we accessing those services, and what are the factors affecting us from accessing those services? Now, where individuals or groups of individuals are excluded or feel on the margins of society, there is often a direct impact on their health. Certain illnesses or disability itself can also cause people to be excluded. So again, the concept of marginalization and exclusion is a very complex one. And for some of us, even when we know that there is a problem, we still find it difficult to get up and try to see how we can access, help. And quite frankly, this is even commoner, it's commoner first and foremost within the ethnic minority group. And when you look at the statistics for that, you find out that the Blacks, generally speaking, or people from Afro-Caribbean origin are at even a greater disadvantage when it comes to some of this issue. Now, what's even worse is if you're a man. Generally speaking, across ethnicity, men, generally speaking, tend to access health very late on. So, the example that I've been given about, bowel cancer and everything, if you look very careful, oftentimes, many of the people would want to avoid going in are people who, for some reason, do feel, particularly men who feel that perhaps they are okay and they feel strong, or going in might even be a sign of weakness. And of course, this is something which I think is even more prevalent within our own community as well. Now, improving the public health is about population health care, making sure that services are inclusive and responsive to all sectors of the population. It necessitates breaking down barriers for people to access health and social care. Now, the reason for people being excluded are numerous and oftentimes very complex. Now, health inequalities, in itself, they are avoidable, quite frankly. But again, we need to remember that it's an unfair differences in health status between groups of people or communities. Reducing inequalities should allow everyone to have the same opportunities to lead a healthy life. And of course, I'm going to go into a little bit of statistics, which was released by by Public Health England, the whole Public Health England, which specifically showed that among children aged 10 to 11 years, in the academic year of 2016 to 2017, children in the Black African and Black Caribbean ethnic groups were most likely to be overweight or obese. Now, Black or Black British females are more likely than white British females to report common mental health disorders, which shows about 29% versus about 20%. Now, not all the statistics is that bad, but of course, generally in life, if you see something you are weak in, you want to try as much as possible to try to compensate for that. And of course, looking at this is kind of like, the challenge here, the reason I've shown these specific statistics is that if by the age of 10 to 11 years, you're already having issues with risk factors that could have consequences later in life, then of course we are not just talking about, a poor start. We are talking about, a potentially risky future for even the younger generation ourselves. Now, these are some of the determinants which, oftentimes is shown. This is a very popular diagram for people who are more involved in, social services or social economic programs. And this is known as the dull green and white head model of health determinants. Generally speaking, mainly we refer to 5. Some reports would mention 7, but generally speaking, I think it is safe to say that these 5 key components tend to have a broader impact on the overall health. Now, again, going into specific details of each of these factors or each of these areas, of course, will take a lot of time. But generally speaking, for many of us, when we look at this diagram, generally speaking, we find out that we are at a greater disadvantage when we look at the overall overall statistics, particularly coming from an ethnic minority group. Now, health inequalities, now race reduces health disparities to biological factors. Unfortunately, what tends to happen oftentimes is, and again, we saw it in COVID, people coming up with all kinds of explanation to say, oh, perhaps it is because of certain genetic factors, maybe other factors that we don't know, maybe biology and things like that. Yes, in between that, there is an answer, but at the same time, the bigger issue, again, when we look very closely, is the fact that there are other underlying issues prior to COVID, which is even more prevalent within the community itself, which of course, right from the beginning, there was no chance for many to even come out of the situation better off, particularly coming from the a health minority subgroup. Most of the variation in self-reported health between and within the community groups can be explained by differences in socioeconomic status itself. Access to health services refer to the availability of services that are timely, appropriate, sensitive, and easy to use. Now, again, in the interest of time, I think I would quickly move on to this. Now, different social groups might also have systematically different experiences within the services that they use, including in terms of service, in terms of quality of care they receive, and whether they are treated with dignity and respect. In 2017, the British Social Attitude Survey, for example, found that respondents who identified as Black reported lower levels of satisfaction with the NHS. Now, the reason I've come to this, which of course, going back to my final slide here, is that fundamentally we have structural issues, partly individual and partly as a community. But of course, the reason I'm focusing on these two is I don't want to focus on government policies because that's not our main objective here. Our main objective is how do we bridge this gap? There is a gap. And for you to bridge any gap in life, both parties involved in the situation need to play their active role. And this is why, one of the reasons why, we, have decided to talk about this at an individual level. We need to look at what services are available locally for us. We've seen an example of what has been presented, but of course, we also share part of that responsibility as well as individuals to proactively look forward to or engage in activities that would help support our health and well-being. And again, as a community as well, and again, which is one of the reasons why I gave appreciation to to the OU Believe who have decided to put this together, because as a community as well, we need to continue to run activities like this on a regular basis, because as a community, when you have a problem as a community, the issue of health inequality is a community issue, and therefore we need to address it together. I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this as an act of ibadah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dr. Balogun, thank you so much. I mean, this is really very, very useful. And the way you rounded up is quite important. It's a two-way thing. You identify that, within our community, ethnic minorities, many of them don't want to go to hospital. It's important that, what do you call it? People change that attitude. If facilities are there and people do not access them, they cannot benefit from them. And also, on the other side as well, you also showed, statistics to show that there's a lot of the time people are not treated with respect. They are not happy with the services. So on both sides, very, very, helpful to know these, statistics. I believe there'll be a lot of questions in that regard and how we can remedy those shortcomings, down the road. Thank you very much. Let's go quickly to Brother Lawal Uriola to talk about the Mental Capacity Act, also in 10 minutes. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yeah, I will be discussing the Mental Capacity Act 2005, I believe. And I would share the screen with this so you can see the slides.
Okay, we can see your slides now. Thank you.
Yeah, good. So this is what I'll be talking about, the Mental Capacity Act, and which also part of it is the deprivation of liberty and safeguards. And I've also added the lasting power of attorney in it because these are vital elements of the act, which every individual, especially those who are in that kind of category whereby they are elderly, old, should know about. The Mental Capacity Act is probably, if you ask any social worker who has been practiced for the past maybe 30, 40 years, they will tell you this is probably the best piece of legislation they've had to use in their work. Because before this act was, before the advent of this act, what it was actually happening is that they were making decisions for people and their views are not being taken along. Their views are not considered at the time. So when you speak with social workers who have been long in the practice, or maybe doctors, they will tell you this act is probably the best thing that's ever happened because it puts this individual who lacks capacity right, in the mix of making that decision. And to start with, the Mental Capacity Act, not 2015, 2005, sorry. Who does it apply to? It applies to all individuals in care and treatment of 16 years and over. And this is only for England and Wales. Mental Capacity Act is decision and time specific. Decision specific in whereby you are looking at an aspect of the individual's life. Where does it lack capacity, or where does she lack capacity? Does she lack capacity to take medication? Will he take the right medication at the right time? Does he have the capacity to decide where he or she wants to live? So those are the kind of decisions we are looking at. And it is time specific. An individual might not have capacity in the afternoon and he or she will have it in the evening. Today, she might not have the capacity, or he might not have the capacity, and tomorrow he will have it. And it is designed to protect and restore power to those vulnerable people who lack capacity. So any individual that lacks capacity, you have to make decision on their behalf, and we'll get there in a bit. So you are not making that decision, or you are not coming to say this individual lack capacity with no facts, with no assessment being done. And I mentioned the lasting power of attorney. The Mental Capacity Act support those who have capacity as well. Before that individual loses his or her capacity, it is advisory that do this LP, we call it LPO here, lasting power of attorney. That someone from the family member are able to make this decision when you lack that capacity. Because if they are making this decision at that time, we know they would have your views. You might have told them that this is where I want to live if this happens. This is what I want to happen if I eventually lose capacity or lose some form of understanding to understand, having that full understanding of what is happening around me or the risk involved in me living alone at home. So who is that individual that could lack capacity? Dementia disease is very common. A stroke or a brain injury could make someone lack capacity. Mental health problems could make someone lack capacity. And you might see this kind of capacity in mental health whereby it fluctuates. The same thing with substance misuse and learning disability. people with autism, Asperger, any kind of learning disability could make people lack capacity, and some form of confusion, drowsiness, unconsciousness due to an illness, needing treatment will make an individual or can make the individual lack capacity. Then these principles are what underpins the act. This is what we work with. And no professional should go to any individuals, assessing capacity without putting these principles into play. The first one is that all individuals must be deemed to have capacity unless proven otherwise. Unless they are making some decision, you are thinking, oh, this is a bit shady, then you have to assess their capacity, but we always have to presume capacity. And if the individual is unable to understand information, or we feel some steps need to be put in place to see if this individual have capacity. One of it is writing it down. Can the individual read if he cannot communicate? Does he need a hearing aid? Does he need an interpreter to interpret these things due to language barrier? Those are the kind of things we need to put in place before we decide that someone doesn't have capacity. And the individual have the right to make unwise decision. Someone might say, I want to put juice in my tea. It might be something it's been doing for a long time. It is wrong for you, it doesn't mean it's wrong for him. People have the right to make unwise decisions, unless those unwise decisions are so many and it puts them at risk. And if we find that someone lacks capacity, any decision we take should be in their best interest. And finally, any decision taken should be least restrictive, because we always have to put at the back of our mind the rights and freedom of this individual. Then who can assess capacity? We look at everyday decisions. At least looking at it, if I remembered well, we are making some form of decision every day, over 7,000 or close to 17,000. Everyday decision whereby you are swapping, you have the TV remote going up and down. I want to watch this. This is what I want to watch. You are making decision every time. Human beings are making decision every time. You are driving. I want gear 1 now. Let me go and gear 3. I should run 40. I should run 60. So human beings are making decision all the time. So your carers, yourself, your family member are making the everyday easy decisions. Then the complex decision whereby treatment, if it is serious medical treatment, or where someone wants to live, should live, or care for an individual, then we are looking at social worker, doctors, and the family members coming together to decide those are complex decisions whereby it needs to be made sensitively, and everything about this individual needs to be brought forward. Their past wishes, what the family thinks they like best, it needs to be brought forward when we're looking at assessing this individual's capacity. Then there are 2 stages of capacity test. The first one, the individual has impairment or dysfunction in their brain or mind. What if the individual, to have this kind of impairment and dysfunction, we need a medical diagnosis from our doctors. What if there is no official form of diagnosis? Then we will say this individual is showing symptoms consistent with maybe dementia disease, memory loss. So we will bring that forward. He or she is having memory issues, and these are the kind of symptoms consistent with dementia and similar disease. Then the second stage test is the impairment or disturbance. It is sufficient enough for the person to lack capacity to make a particular decision, especially in regards to their treatment, serious medical treatment, or we are looking at a place for them to live. They can no longer live at home, or we are looking at meeting their care needs. And then the functionality test. These are the 4 things we are going to look at. Understanding of information. Does this individual understand the information? Mostly they will do. But retaining information, which is the second one, is very difficult for someone with dementia or for someone with stroke, which has affected some form of their part of their brain, which stores information. And if the individual cannot retain information long enough, then they will not be able to weigh the benefit and burdens or pros and cons of those decisions that needs the options on the table. The individual, normally they'll be able to communicate their decision. They might tell you, no, I don't, you ask someone, where do you want to live? he or she might say, I want to live in Spain. You know, he or she is unable to live in Spain, but at least they're able to communicate. But can they communicate to make this decision? That would also, so this second and third, retaining and weighing of the information is where you found most people lacking. However, the first one, some do understand actually the information. And finally, deprivation of liberty is depriving someone of their right to leave their home, to leave the care home because of the risk posed to their life. And this is also part of the Mental Capacity Act, whereby we need authorization to actually deprive people of their liberty. And the local authority and hospital can deprive you of your liberty if you're in hospital, if you're in a care home, even in your own home, if it is not safe for you. And that would be it from me. And I would say you should give it a read more, especially the lasting power of attorney. Give it a bit of a read online. Look at it and see. Look at your age. Look at your history, family tree. Is it common? Do we have dementia in our family? It's something that should be discussed among family members. And it's not just for the old as well, the young people. We've seen people in their 40s, 50s suffer dementia disease. And that's the presentation I would like to put forward today. Thank you for the time. And sorry, I'm a bit over the...
Thank you so much. I mean, for that presentation about, I mean, the Mental Capacity Act, which is really very important. I mean, it's a piece of legislation that really recognizes human dignity, no matter, I mean, what situation a person is. Thank you very much. I mean, one point you mentioned there, which really struck my mind. You know, I have a friend. I mean, he's capable, he's an academic, but he always drink his tea with orange. I mean, fresh orange. He says it's the best tea. If you have sweet orange, instead of using sugar, put orange in the tea. So putting juice in a tea may not be an unwise decision, but the person who doesn't do it might see it as that, as you
Yeah, you might say like, oh, this.
Yeah, exactly. So that's his choice. Very interesting. Thank you so much. Now, I mean, we've managed time. I mean, we thank all our speakers. And I mean, I believe that there will be a lot of questions, I mean, for each of the speakers. But as we normally do, before we go to questions, let's quickly have a brief interlude by going to the control room for our, brief video clips. Control room, please.
My parents chose to name me at Old Kent Road Islamic and Cultural Center as a baby. And when the time came for me to start my family, my daughter was also named at this masjid.
Same as my story, I was also born and named there. I attended Maracas and used to play football after classes with my mates.
The Old Kent Road Mosque and Islamic Cultural Center, MAN UK, is a community where all Muslims enjoy the bond of brotherhood and the sweetness of sisterhood.
Old Kent Road Masjid has played an important role in my spiritual and social development and that of my young family.
It is a home, a place of solace for everyone, especially the Muslims of African descent living in London, United Kingdom.
This is a heritage we treasure and must preserve for the next generation. We need you to make this dream come true.
Kindly donate and encourage your family, friends, and loved ones to contribute towards the rebuilding of our mosque.
May Allah bless and reward you abundantly. Allahumma Amin.
Please help build our mosque.
The Oak End Road Mosque and Islamic Cultural Center. Alhamdulillah, with your support, the demolition works have now commenced on our 100-year-old building. We are still in need of your support to fund the remaining stages of the project to complete the mosque regeneration. You can help rebuild this house of Allah by donating, volunteering, and sharing this message. May Allah bless you. Ameen.
Jazakumullah khair jaza. Thank you so much. I mean, those clips remind us about the Oak End Road Mosque and Islamic Cultural Center project. It's still ongoing. I mean, as you could see, the demolition has completed now, and we are moving on to, I mean, the piling, as the experts say, and inshallah, the first phase is, I mean, on track to be completed. But after the first phase, I mean, we still have the second, third. So, I mean, we need donations to keep coming in. And the £100, I mean, campaign is still on. So we call on all, I mean, friends of man, all, I mean, Muslims across the world, all well-wishers across the world. Because, I mean, apart from being, I mean, a religious place of worship for Muslims, it's also going to really benefit community. It's a public place where we have, I mean, incubators for teaching people, entrepreneurship, and a whole lot of other things that will benefit the community. So donations, I mean, are still, I mean, required. So we hope people will continue to donate towards, I mean, getting the mosque built on track, inshallah. So as you continue to donate, may Allah reward you abundantly. I mean, no amount is small. I mean, if you cannot, I mean, contribute to the £100 campaign, no matter the amount, you are able to. I mean, the details of the MAN account are there. Please put in as much as possible. And we are still expecting the big donors. We know there are some very rich people around there, you know, who wants to leave a legacy. I mean, helping to build this mosque, I mean, will be a legacy. And it's in Islam, we call it Sadaqatul Jariyah. It's an ongoing charity. You know, as long as the building continue to be used, you'll be getting reward from Allah. And I mean, and you'll be mentioned really that you made a contribution to this and you establish a legacy in your lifetime. So anyone who is interested, you know, to partner with us to make, I mean, big donations, I mean, to help this cause, please reach out to the Oak End Road Mosque and Islamic Cultural Center, and we will be really happy to provide any necessary, I mean, further information that such big donors may require to, I mean, facilitate them helping this project. So may Allah continue to assist every one of us, and may Allah make the project a reality. Now, let's move on to questions. We've had four very inspiring, you know, presentations on different aspects of our health. And, you know, we expect that people will want, I mean, to ask questions and for further explanations on the different issues raised. So control room, let's see, are there any questions now to be taken?
Assalamu alaikum. Just to remind people to put their questions in the Q&A box. So if you look on your device, the Q&A button is there. You can put your questions there, or you can also raise your hand, press on the hand raise button, and we'll allow you to ask your question directly. There is a question here that says, as a mother of an autistic son, am I the main decider for him, or professionals can overrun my decision?
That's, I mean, very good. That's, I mean, in relation to the Mental Capacity Act. So can our brother take that question, answer that question?
It depends, because obviously with autistic, the individual is still a child and the mom is the parent at the time. So the social worker will look at that decision the mom is making. If the decision the social feels it's not in the best interest of that child, then she will stand up against it.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, that's
the right to make
very
this
helpful.
decision.
Go on.
He or she is your child, and this decision, you are the main decision maker, as long as he is still classed as a child by law. However, if the social worker believes or feels that you are making some decision not in his or her best interest, putting him or her at risk, then they will stand up against such kind of decision.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's very reasonable. And because I mean, the best interest of the child is always paramount. I mean, when dealing with such people. Thank you so much. Any further questions?
This session is actually being supported by the Wellbeing Outreach team, and we've got 2 of their representatives on the panel that can ask questions to the panelists. So I don't know if Alhaji Atunrashe would have questions for the panelists on behalf of the community.
Alhaji Atunrashe. Okay, while we are waiting, I asked Ms. Tura a question earlier regarding the picture of the brain in her presentation. I mean, does anything with the brain, I mean, is a causative factor in relation to diabetes?
Yeah, the complication, thank you, sir, for your observation. It's about complications of having the blood sugar fluctuating if it's not well controlled. So there's the risk of having hypo, and then that can lead to irritability. This is with problem with the brain, the way the person becomes very aggressive and irritable, because if the sugar is too low, because the first the nutrients that the brain uses is sugar primarily, and then when that is not there, you know, the behavior is kind of can be affected. And the person it can result to falls or just fainting. Yeah.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. Any further questions?
Yes. If I may. Hello.
Yes, please. Yeah.
May I go on?
Yes, please.
Oh, thank you, sir. My question will go to Mr. Ross. Thank you for this presentation. We all know how devastating is cancer, and we know there are over 100 cancer, but this particular one we are talking about, it does its damage, and sometimes it ends up taking people's life. May I ask, you did mention that once you are within the age range, you will be tested, that is up to 74. But if you are above 74 and you are having these symptoms, would you please give us a number to call, just as you did in your presentation to the elders group, so that this community will enjoy and benefit from that, which is very, very crucial. Also, that the second question would be, how prone are the Black ethnic minority to bowel cancer? The third question is, if this is genetic, because we know that if it is genetic, we can't help much, we are predisposed to having it. What advice will you give this community, as you did give us at the elders group? What do we need to look out for, and what should we do once we know that my parent has got this? So please, thank you.
Sure, thank you for those very good questions. I'd be happy to go through them one by one. So the first one about the screening age that you were asking, so you're quite correct that the automatic program is there for people between the age of 60 to 74, but once you're over the age of 74, the bowel screening kit is no longer sent to you automatically in the post. However, if you wish to continue screening, you can actually do so, but you're right, you have to call a number to get the screening test sent out to you. And I can give the number to people right now so that they can make a note of that. And if they are over 74 and would like to continue screening, so the number that you're, yeah. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I missed that.
Yes, you may give us now.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So the number is 0800 707 60 60. And I'll repeat that once more. So it's 0800 707 60 60. That's the number to call.
Thank you.
No problem at all. So I think your second question was to do with the rate of bowel cancer amongst the BME communities. I don't actually have the figures in front of me right here, but what I can actually tell you is that we know that in BME communities, there can be a reluctance to engage with the screening programs. And if there's a reluctance to engage with the screening programs, cancers can actually be at a later stage when that person ends up in hospital. So instead of the person coming to their GP with maybe some symptoms and being picked up at stage 1, or doing the screening test and being picked up at stage 1 or stage 2, they could end up at A&E, accident and emergency, at actually stage 3 and 4. So again, I wish I had specific figures that I could give you here for each of the communities in the UK. All I know is that sometimes within BME communities, there can be cultural barriers to actually completing things like the screening test. I mean, to be frank, at the end of the day, we're talking about taking samples of our poo, which I know is maybe not the most exciting thing, or, you know, the most, it's probably not the thing that you most want to do when you wake up in the morning. So there are definite barriers in place to people engaging with screening, and we can see that in BME communities. And the third question was actually to do with genetics. So the science says that around 50% of bowel cancers are probably preventable due to a healthier lifestyle. So if 50% of bowel cancers are preventable due to taking steps with your lifestyle, that says that the other 50% of bowel cancers are caused due to other factors, other things, and genetics certainly plays a part. So if you have a family history of bowel cancer, or any cancers for that matter, but in this instance, bowel cancer, please let your GP know about that. And the reason why I say that is if you were to ever go to your doctor with symptoms, they would already realize or already know that there's a family history that runs through your family, and that could lead to something like a quicker referral to a gastro specialist, or it could lead to being screened earlier in life. So instead of having to wait until you're 60 for the screening program, you might start being screened at a younger age if there is that genetic link amongst your family. And there is something called Lynch syndrome, which is a particular type of genetic condition that can put someone at a greater increase of developing bowel cancer. So again, these are things that people can be tested for if they are aware of, family history. You can be tested to find out if these types of things are within your genetics, and if they are, obviously action can be taken to make sure that you're looked after at a younger age. I hope that answers all three of your questions.
Thank you very much for addressing those questions. Very helpful. Any further questions?
Somebody said, how do you reconcile the wishes of someone who has since lost capacity, e.g. their wish is not to be put into a care home, but living independently is becoming more demanding? And then the same person says, how accurate is the bowel screening, and is it worth and allowable to be screened every year?
Okay.
So the first question is for Brother Lowell.
Yeah, in regards to someone that wishes to stay at home, what the local authority would normally do is we try to make it comfortable as much as we can. We'll put support in place, and we will put care in place to ensure the home is safe. I'm working with a particular individual whereby we have to cut off the gas, we cut off the cooker, and then we took out every combustible in the house, because that's what she wants, that's what the son wants. So we try to make this work by putting care in, maybe 4 to 5 times a day. Remember, having someone living in their own home, it's actually cheaper for the local authority as well. So we try to see how we can make this happen. However, if this is becoming unsafe for the individual to be at home alone for maybe 2-3 hours or significant amount of time due to falls, if the individual is having falls at home, or he or she is banging on the door or the window constantly distressed because remember, he or she, the door is locked. So banging on doors and windows, then we'll sit down with the family. We'll put together what we call benefit and burdens. Mental capacity assessment will be conducted. We'll look at the benefits of her being at home, the impact on it, the impact it is having on its physical and mental health. And social isolation plays a key part in this. If the carers are leaving and the individual is banging on the door, I want to go out, I want to go home, we are looking at, is she or is he or she being socially isolated? Does she need more people to speak with? And does he have that kind of understanding that will a daycare work? If he or she goes out to daycare, if she comes back, will she calm down? So we look at all this, then we make a best interest decision whereby family will be involved. If the individual doesn't have capacity, then we have to make the least restrictive. And in most cases, it will have to be the individual going into the care home. But we will look at him or her remaining at home. If that is not possible, then we will look at the other option, care home, extra care, or does any family member wants to take her in or take him in? We would explore this option. Because remember, we just don't want to take people to care home because there are lots of solicitors going around checking, how they got there. So we would have to put doors in place, like I said, deprivation of liberty and safeguards. It's for their own safety anyway. So we would always respect those views and wishes of the individual. However, we will consider other option if we are unable to meet their wishes and give them what they want. I hope that answers it.
Thank you. The second question is for Dr. Ross.
Yeah, sure. So I'm looking at the question here in the chat from Dr. Hamid, and that was, is it possible to request a bowel cancer test earlier than age with the GP? So the answer to that is, it's not possible to come onto the program, the automatic program where the kit is sent out to you in the post every 2 years. That only kicks in from the age of 60 onwards up until 74. However, if you are a younger person and you go to your GP with symptoms, the GP can actually give you a test. And again, that test, if it comes back positive, so i.e. blood has been found in the test, you'll then, it's possible for you then to be referred to the hospital where you'll be given a colonoscopy. So just to summarize that, younger people can't become an automatic member of the screening program, if you like, but if they go to their doctor with symptoms, they can be offered a screening test. So I hope that answers that question.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Now, I want to ask a question to Dr. Balogun. And as an academic, sometimes we challenge numbers. We do that all the time. And it's not, just to be prejudiced, but just to get facts straight. Because a lot of the time, particularly in relation to ethnic minorities, when we cite numbers 20%, 25%, 50%, sometimes if you do not know the actual numbers, they can be screwed. Because if you have two people, one accesses, one does not access, if you want to percentages, it's 50%. You are just talking about two people. You would say 50%. So it's, do these numbers add up? And the reason I'm asking this is, there have been a lot of, research indicated, even big organizations like the World Bank in relation to, facts in relation to poverty across the world and things like that. You find out sometimes, when these numbers are looked at critically, they don't really add up. So I just wanted to throw that in. Because when you were talking about, the percentage, comparative percentage, does the actual numbers really add up? Or are we just talking about small numbers here, but the percentage makes them really look really huge?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. I think that's, I do question myself with that number as well. Again, with statistics, every time we look at statistics, I always tell people take it with a pinch of salt, because obviously we don't know the background data, we don't know the sample population, we don't know how the data has been analyzed, and it's very easy for people to kind of massage numbers to suit a particular agenda or perspective. Now, but again, I think, yes, the number aside, I think the reason why, this number in this instance is very relevant is because when you conduct a particular statistics over time and you get the same pattern of results, it becomes, when you see a pattern, it becomes less likely that that number is incorrect, or it strengthens the statistics itself. Now, interestingly, and again, for us, if you wanted to read more, King's Fund is one organization that does a lot of research, particularly concerning inequalities, issues around diversity. That's the King's Fund. So if you could just check the website. Now, they've been running a series of programs, and what they tend to do is that they sample opinion from different parts of the world. The statistics, the numbers that has been reflected with some of the statistics given is also representative of what we've seen in the US as well. So in the United States, when you look at the statistics in the United States as well, it's very similar to what we see in the UK as well. So from that angle, one could say with certain degree of confidence that yes, the numbers may not be accurate, but in general terms, one could conclude that yes, indeed, we have issues of that ethnic disparity. Another one which I didn't even mention is concerning socioeconomic status. Now, if you look at the commonest factor that affects health inequality is socioeconomic status, whether you're looking at one part of England versus another part of England, or even within the same area, when you look at one local authority versus another local authority, socioeconomic status is a key factor. But when you now account for that, and you look at ethnicity as well, you discover that even for people within the same socioeconomic status, ethnicity still plays a role with regards to access to health and health inequalities as well. So oftentimes, even people at the same socioeconomic status, someone from an ethnic minority would still be at a disadvantage. So generally speaking, I think over time, we've seen these numbers, and because of that, a lot of people are now beginning to manage policies around some of those factors, and I think which I think is a good thing moving forward.
Thank you so much. I mean, that's really very helpful. I want to follow up with another question. I mean, this is the other side of the question that I've asked. Now, I mean, I was called to intervene in relation to, a member of our community. And this relates to sometimes understanding the culture of ethnic minorities when dealing with them in relation to access and things like that. Now, somebody was invited in, he had to go through a medical procedure. But you find out that, before the procedure, the doctors will explain to you the possibilities that things might go wrong. That perhaps maybe your bowels could be punctured, things go wrong. The person said he doesn't want to do it. He says, you see the way, because that's the culture of that. Because they were just rolling it out, said he doesn't want to do it. And he just, he just left and he came back. When I got to know it, I then had to explain to that person that, no, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but they just need to really, so perhaps maybe, I don't know whether, our medical team, our doctors here are trained in that regard to take perhaps maybe the orientation of, the level of orientation and understanding of ethnic minority groups into account when telling them about the risks. Because if you just roll it out up front like that, people are scared. They don't want to go on.
Yeah, and I think that's a very valid point. And I think, from a sociocultural perspective, I think I've experienced it before, and I've seen it as well before. You're very right. That is true. I think from a training perspective, generally speaking, as you would expect, most doctors will be trained to deal with issues that occur commonly within their community or within the country itself. Now, as an overall principle, every or most healthcare professionals will be trained to see the perspective of the patient. Now, at times, in an attempt to get the job done or to tick the boxes, people just roll out the carpet and begin to list all these things. You could bleed, you could die, you could come out with a disability and things like that. Now, again, I believe, to some extent, I think more needs to be done with regards to that for an individual to be able to speak to, or for the healthcare professional to be able to interact with that individual at their own level of understanding. And again, if we do have concern, and again, that's why it's important for us to continue to have this community cohesion. If we have concerns with the way something has been communicated to us within the setup, I mean, it's, again, what I tell people to do is speak to somebody who you trust or who you believe perhaps is in that field. There are quite a number of doctors around. There are people who are more sensitive. And alhamdulillah, we are beginning to have more of our own senior professionals within the field who understand some of these issues, and some of them are beginning to pass this message across. It's going to take some time for that to happen. And again, but I said at the beginning as well, we as an individual, we have a duty of responsibility on ourselves to understand the healthcare system itself. But at the same time, we expect the healthcare system to meet us at a certain point where we can all, make it easy for everyone to be able to access health very easily.
That's right. Thank you so much. I mean, any further questions? Control room.
Sister Mustura has a hands up, and I think there's a question for her on diabetics. It says that a lot of the food that are talked about when we talk about diabetics management seem to preclude our African dishes. It appears that most of our African dishes are seen to be not very good for diabetes. So how do you advise us to manage that?
Oh, thank you for that question. We are lucky that we're here. We're lucky that we have high quality Nigerian foods, I would say here. There is gari, there is the efo, there is amala, there's everything. I'm just thinking, like, if I were to be in Nigeria and I'm in Luth, the same thing, I have all the foods available to me, just as if I'm in Nigeria. So it's left for us to really understand that we are blessed with our food. It's just that we have to understand what portion size is. As African, our intake of carbohydrates is quite high, and that's where the problem is, and the way we cook. Ideally, what we're saying now is that if you have your plate, and a quarter of your plate should be your carbohydrate amount. That's if I have my hand like that, right? That area is my carbohydrate portion, small. That area is my meat portion, my fish portion of meat, my protein. And if you look at my fingers like that, the two of them together, if I circle like that, around that side, that means half of my plate is for vegetables. But then when we cook our vegetables, we need to be very mindful of the amount of oil we use. If you're going to be cooking the way you're cooking in Nigeria, it's a no-no. So you have to really change, understand why you're changing, and change what you really eat. Because if you have to, the amount of oil you need is quite, I'm saying very small. And I want you to understand it this way. If you have, think about ewa going and the oil on it, compare it with baked beans. Do you see oil in baked beans? Then think about the oil you see in ewa going, or the way we cook our ewa. So that will give you an understanding of how low the oil you need to use in cooking your vegetable. And then we tend to take white rice. I think you want to go for the brown types, that the brown rice, the whole grain things. And that beans, a portion of beans per day is good. When you take your they are saying we are back to the era of green plantain and beans. So when you take your carbohydrates, make sure they're like the brown ones. Your spaghetti is brown, your rice is brown, your bread is brown and seeded. You know, all those things that keep you fuller for longer when you take them, so that the energy is reduced, is kind of reduced slowly. You know, we call it glycemic index, you know, things that take a long time to, when you digest it, you know, it's digested slowly. And then what we're actually saying is that because Africa, our food can be up to 60 to 70% of carbohydrates, but we need a lot lower than that. We should be looking at 40 or something lower than that. So, and that's the description I've tried to show you with my hands. And then when we have our meat, we want to really, really cut down on red meats. You want to go for things like poultry. And when you go for poultry, you want to remove the skin. So you want to really think, I mean, you have to think about all these things, you know, it's a lot as you're cooking, as you're preparing, as you're buying. So all your healthy eating, you know, you have to take everything into consideration. But the key to me is having a lot of vegetables. We are blessed. We are so blessed with variety of vegetables, and we have everything here. So our food is excellent because our foods are not refined. We have whole food, we have vegetables, we have other foods. So we are very, very blessed to be here. All the foods are available in better quality than Nigerian foods.
Thank you. Thank you so much, I mean, for that.
And I was actually going to talk about that. If you listen to Dr. Ross, when he was talking about the risk factors and modifying factors, we said the same thing about the food. And if you saw my slide, at one point I said exercise is good as well, and that it can help with colon cancer and diabetes. He said that as well. So these are long-term conditions. Now what we have in public health are long-term conditions that can be managed with diet and exercise, reduce your stress, sleep well. These are the factors we're talking about now, you know, so that you don't have inflammation and you can be relaxed, you know. So I was actually going to talk about the colon cancer and the food. It's the same food. It's the same type of recommendation that we have for most of these we don't have diseases that kill except COVID that has just come. We've got rid of cholera. We don't have, you know, all diarrhea, things that used to kill. We don't have all those ones anymore. What we have are lifestyle diseases, which we have the power to take care of ourselves.
Thank you so much, Elijah Mistura. Thank you very much for that highlight. I mean, we are about 10 minutes above time now. I mean, we should be rounding up now. We thank all our speakers, I mean, really for this very, very useful presentation. And I mean, we hope that, I mean, people will take heed, and perhaps maybe the PowerPoints presentation, if they could be left behind, because people might require them, request for them to remind them. So we thank you so much. May Allah put this in your Mizan al-Khair. I believe, inshallah, that, I mean, when we call you some other time, you'll be really willing to oblige us. Now, before we go, today's Ya Ayyuhal Ladhina Amanu, you who believe, comes from Quran chapter 5, verse 90. And, you know, Dr. Ross mentioned it when he was saying about intoxicants. Everybody else talked about this. So the Quran says, Ya Ayyuhal Ladhina Amanu, O you who believe, innamal khamru wal maisar, that is intoxicants, alcohol, and gambling, you know, and also idol worship, religion. They are, you know, unsafe. They are unhealthy. They are unhealthy for your body. Minamali shaitan. It's part of the handiworks of shaitan because they are unhealthy. They can make you sick. So keep away from them. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ, so that you'll be successful. You know, this is a revelation in the 7th century. You know, I mean, talking about those issues that, I mean, we should keep away from them. So as Muslims, I just thought we should remind us, you know, I mean, when alcohol, smoking, and all those are out of the way, then you have less things to manage to stay healthy. So thank you so much. And I'll be handing over to our anchor to sign us out tonight. Aladia Fadila.
Jazakumullah khairan for all these talks today. We really appreciate you. And like Prof said, please and please, we would like to have your slides because we have requests already for people asking that if we can share with them. So if you please give them if you send them to us, we'll be able to share with our audience as usual. And I really want to say a very big thank you on behalf of the association to all our speakers tonight. And I hope you will answer us again, as Prof said. Very soon we will call you again because there are lots of topics, a lot of issues that have not been resolved tonight. So I pray that Allah bless us and give us elongated life so that we can still come back to discuss this. So, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
In just under 60 seconds, I'm going to tell you why investing in this opportunity will change your life. Are you ready? Start the clock. Over 20 years ago, a group of believers acquired a derelict pub slap bang in the centre of the Old Kent Road. As we've grown, so has our need for space. And we are embarking upon the journey of a lifetime to extend the good work of this masjid. And we need you to join us on this journey. Let me remind you of Allah's promise. Whoever builds a mosque for the sake of Allah, Allah will build for him a house in paradise. And it doesn't stop there. The masjid that we build will continue to give you rewards for as long as it remains standing, perhaps decades after you pass away. Think about all the people who attend the mosque to pray 5 times a day, every single day of the year. The Jummah service that is attended by hundreds of people, the hundreds of youngsters learning how to recite the Quran, and your fellow brothers and sisters breaking their fast in the month of Ramadan, right here in this masjid. Inshallah, you'll get a slice of the reward. All of these and more coming straight to your scale of good deeds. So what are you waiting for? Help us build this masjid. Sponsor a prayer space and get your friends, neighbours and loved ones to sponsor one too. Or even better, get together and sponsor a whole saf. And inshallah, watch how Allah elevates you in this life and the next.
The Old Kent Road Mosque and Islamic Cultural Center. The building is now 100 years old and it's set for demolition after Ramadan. Should that be the end of this Islamic heritage? You can help rebuild this mosque by donating, volunteering, and sharing this message. May Allah bless you. Ameen.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان